those children that are using those sidewalks. Not just those children. There are actually pictures of those folks who live in the community trying to get to the bus stop. That are walking in ditches as well. So this is a step forward. I'm proud of it. I'm excited about it for our community and for that school. But let's try to push for a few more steps in starting this soon. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments, questions? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion by Commissioner Caban, seconded by Commissioner Maddox, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. We've got a speaker on item number 6. Mr. Epstein, you want to share your wisdom with us on this item before we take it? Had you all planned to do it?
We have, sir. Whatever.
You want to wait?
Pleasure.
Okay. All right. Let's do the presentation.
Okay, and I'll pass this down to Autumn, but I'll just start off briefly. And Autumn, we do have a brief because this is such a huge issue. Just a couple things to keep in mind and for clarity. We were asked to do a review of a proposed water quality large-scale treatment facility for Lake Munson. As the IA board is aware, Lake Munson is not a blueprint project. The item goes into all of the substantial upstream improvements. The last of the blueprint projects actually is going to be an agenda item, as Autumn will tell you. It'll be coming back to you at your next meeting. It's segment 4 of Capitol Cascades Trail. That actually ends north of Lake Henrietta. That being said, this agenda item does a number of things. It looks at the $285 million worth of improvements upstream that this community has done. It talks about the outcome of that. It does talk a little bit about Capitol Cascades Trail Segment 4, but importantly, that's going to be coming back to you. Make no mistake, it does provide a full analysis for the citizens' request without a recommendation for anything to be done. But the last point I really wanted to make is, and I want this to be clear too for those watching, this is an ongoing action process by Leon County, led by Leon County. There is engaged today, based on actions taken by the County Commission back in October, a Lake Munson action plan. Autumn will talk about it a bit. I believe the first of the periodic updates on that plan is forthcoming either at the next County Commission meeting or perhaps the one thereafter. And then, of course, there is a blueprint project related to treating the water upstream, but you'll get into some of those differentiations in this presentation. I think the request for this agenda item, and Mr. Epstein will correct later if not, probably was born out of reviewing the Capitol Cascades Trail Segment 4 and maybe opinions from that, but we'll get into all of that in this presentation. So thank you for that preamble, and Autumn will walk you through a little bit of history and what's going on now.
All right.
All right, thanks, Ben. Well, let's just get right into it. Your agenda item contains a lot of information, including the scope and fee for a preliminary study of a proposed large-scale wetland treatment facility. But it really boils down to a couple key themes, which all of those will be addressed in this presentation. First, we'll highlight the hundreds of millions of dollars spent over the last 30 years on projects that have resulted in improved water quality at Lake Munson. Discuss the ongoing work at Blueprint, the city, and the county that will continue to move the dial at the lake. This includes the recent action by the Board of County Commissioners to implement the Lake Munson Action Plan, which will address the immediate challenges and provide for long-term water quality benefits. Finally, the agenda item addresses the proposed large-scale man-made wetland treatment facility and recommends the IA board take no further action on the concept. However, through acceptance of this report, Blueprint will continue working with the city and the county and the state to implement the multitude of projects in your adopted work plan that will improve the water quality at the lake. So first, let's just talk about the 30 years of stormwater projects in the Lake Munson Basin. This basin is 39,000 acres, or miles, or 60 square miles, sorry about that. And it incorporates much of our urban area that was established prior to stormwater standards. Together, the city, county, and Blueprint have 26 projects totaling $285 million in this basin. Many of these projects treat previously untreated stormwater, like Cascades Park, and they also include septic to sewer projects. And the data shows that they've worked, as we'll see on the next slide. As you can see in these charts, total nitrogen and phosphorus has significantly decreased in the lake. Furthermore, Munson Slough, which brings the stormwater to Lake Munson, is no longer considered impaired by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, meaning the water entering Lake Munson has already been effectively treated upstream through the many investments described on the prior slide. This is truly a testament to all the science-based, targeted, and collaborative projects implemented by Blueprint, the city, and the county. I'm not saying that Blueprint should get all the credit, but you did open Cascades Park the same year that the levels started to decline. Blueprint 2000 projects intentionally targeted improved water quality at Lake Munson, Ames Sink, and ultimately Willow Springs. You can see it's been a big help. And we, at Blueprint, have almost 10 more projects in the Munson Basin that will continue this good work based in best management practices for accomplishing complicated project goals. Blueprint roadway projects are not included in the $285 million, but it's important to share that these roads were constructed prior to stormwater standards, and therefore the roadway runoff today is substantially not treated. For example, Spring Hill Road was first paved in the 1940s. When we implement the Airport Gateway project, we'll provide for stormwater treatment for 1.7 miles of currently untreated runoff along Spring Hill Road. And this is the case for other segments of Airport Gateway, Capitol Circle Southwest under construction now, future Orange Avenue, and of course Tharp Street, also in the Munson Basin. Beyond the roadways, we have stormwater-specific projects in the basin. These include the 3dB Pond, where the Florida Department of Environmental Protection has awarded Blueprint for a grant for innovative stormwater treatment, such as the BAM filter and a flex rake system, which is shown in the image on the slide. Capitol Cascades Trail Segment 4 reduces sediment and provides stormwater treatment, and we'll be bringing an agenda item back on this item at a future meeting. I want to stay focused on Blueprint, but it's certainly worth stating that the Board of County Commissioners recently approved the implementation of the Lake Munson Action Plan. This action plan will address the immediate challenges with algae and vegetation and provides a plan for improving the water quality over the long term. One key point, the Board of County Commissioners did not approve dredging the lake, as it would disturb the contaminated sediment on the lake bottom, resulting in greater harm to the lake and downstream. So I've provided information on what's been done and what's already in progress. So let's turn to the proposed concept for the large-scale man-made wetland treatment facility. It's envisioned to be on the west side of Lake Munson. As you can see in the image, this is a predominantly forested area, as well as land that the city currently uses for the Thomas P. Smith Water Reclamation Facility and for stormwater conveyance and storage. The facility would pump water from Lake Munson and treat it through a constructed wetland. And I just want to remind that this proposed facility or any project at Lake Munson is not a Blueprint project. And there have been discussions at prior IA board meetings about the Segment 4 concept, which is an approved Blueprint project. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll bring back an item on that at a future meeting. As you recall from a few slides ago, the water entering Lake Munson is no longer considered impaired. And the water in the lake doesn't have the levels of impairment that are needed for efficient removal in a wetland system. Therefore, the proposed system is not a good match for the challenges at Lake Munson. It would require clearing and removal of over 150 acres of forested lands. As mentioned previously, the city-owned site is currently in use, and the National Forest property could potentially require an act of Congress to be able to use. While this concept is quite preliminary, we estimate that it would be upward of $50 million to acquire the land and construct it. Building a 165-acre treatment facility on forested land to treat water with low levels of contaminants is not a practical or efficient way to help Lake Munson. However, actions are already underway to help the lake. The county is implementing the action plan, addressing the immediate challenges and enhancing the water quality. The city and the county and Blueprint have numerous projects that will continue to improve the water quality of the lake. And these are tried and true methods that are science-backed and based in best management principles. With that, we ask you to accept this report, knowing that we will continue to implement upstream stormwater projects as the county staff implements the Lake Munson Action Plan.
Okay. Mr. Epstein, and then we'll go to question and discussion.
How many speakers do we have?
That again? Yeah, just one speaker.
Well, thank you. Thank you to staff for putting this together and the board for listening. My asking for this actually was in response to the Innovative Stormwater White Paper. And if you look at the original timeline for Capital Cascades 4, this was supposed to have been completed in July of 2021. And the results of that paper is excellent, except it says site constraints. The original project was supposed to have over 100 acres of wetland treatment all the way up and down the central drainage ditch. And when the project was rebid in 2019, it only focuses on publicly owned land. And that's a problem because we have the city who's doing all these brownfield up and down, but there's not enough capacity upstream to actually accomplish the goals that you set out for Capital Cascades 4, which says it cannot treat water, sediment, trash, or anything because of its site constraints. I think there might have been a slight misunderstanding because the city owns a lot of land right south of Lake Henrietta, and there's a piece of land for sale. And such a treatment system could actually be in a train from Lake Henrietta flowing south. It would actually passively treat the water as it comes through, fill up with Lake Munson, and if it's ever dredged, you could have more capacity to then recycle the water. And according to the Capital Cascades 4 contractor, they say actively treating stormwater between rainfall events provides significantly more treatment compared to passive concepts. That was what I was expecting to see for the Capital Cascades 4 design. The white paper also says the decreasing trend in nutrient concentration suggests that the stormwater retrofit projects are the result. We do not test stormwater facilities. This is something we've been asking for years to do, to see if they're efficient, to see if they work. This was recommended by the governor's Blue-Green Algae Task Force. So we have no data that links the creation of these projects to the water quality. Have they helped? Certainly. But we do not have scientific data. And Sean McGlynn, who's on the Blueprint CAC, he wanted me to mention this was not on their agenda, but also he's been doing independent sampling that shows up to 10 times the concentrations of nutrients that's what's in your report. I recommend that the Blueprint Commission testing of all the stormwater facilities that they have mentioned in this agenda item to see. And if you actually look at Cascades Park, which was mentioned, there was originally 14,000 pounds of nitrogen and 4,600 pounds of phosphorus. And if you look at what's been constructed, minus the 3D pond, I have some questions about it. So Franklin Boulevard, Cascades Park, 2 ponds, Anita Favors Plaza, and Colchute Pond. If you wouldn't mind, give me an extra minute.
Up.
Thank you. I will.
Give you an unlimited.
It only treats 1,000 pounds of nitrogen, about 7%, or less than 20% of the phosphorus. There is no scientific reason why this should drop down like this. We need to find out why, and that's why we need more planning.
Okay, if you'd start to wrap up.
I will wrap up. Yes, thank you, sir. And I just wanted to say to Mr. Proctor's proposal, one of the ideas was, and actually the 1999 plan that dredged 25 acres of Lake Munson, the final step was to hydraulically dredge the lake and create amenities.
Thank you, sir.
That's how you get people down there.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, if I might,
Commissioner Proctor.
I think the combined report, Alder, thank you, Autumn, and Mr. Epstein, coupled with comments from Dr. McGlynn, barrage of science that we've accumulated over the years. Most of our focus on Lake Munson has not been for the good of the order of the lake, but there's been a sentimental concern with the lake not flowing Wakulla Springs, and I think probably the dominant catalyst has been the interest of protecting Wakulla Springs more so than protecting that lake and safety and health of the neighbors. And but by any means you can, whatever it takes. But Wakulla Spring has been the major, I would say, impetus. It
says a lot about quality of engineering that's required. That Ms. Calder says to us, we don't have the space, we don't have the woods. I signaled to us the other day that our federal government, which has land all over the world, including land in Leon County, it would be awesome to explore us capturing additional lands which belong to the citizens of the United States, of which we are citizens of the United States. And potentially, in terms of treatment facilities like that, we have a huge forest that's doing nothing. And I would certainly think that in our future, those possibilities, engineering, sewer treatment, et cetera, are well worth our consideration. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Barkley. Commissioner Caban.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lake Munson's in District 2, and I do know that this issue is extremely important to the residents that live on Lake Munson. I did have a conversation with the county administrator, and the next commission meeting, as we saw, Lake Munson is coming back as an agenda item. And so I do believe that in our Board of County Commission meeting would be the best time to look at this further. But I do fully anticipate coming to that meeting with questions and looking for updates to see where we stand on the progress over the last 5 to 6 months. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Caban. Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you. Here again, I think this is at the same meeting I made the motion for us to bring this forward. We had a robust conversation about it, and I believe Commissioner Williams-Cox actually had brought up the idea of us meeting, city and county board meeting together to talk about what we do, not just with Munson, but with all our water bodies and what the connections are there. Commissioner Caban brings up a great point in that we are addressing with the Lake Munson action plan over at the county, and we do have some stuff coming back in which we'll be able to ask some questions there. One key point I think Mr. Epstein makes is about the testing piece of it, our testing. I think we should dig into that at some point. How are we doing our testing? What does that testing look like? How often are we doing our testing? That kind of stuff. Do I think this is the place to have that conversation? I don't quite know yet, but I know some of the questions at the county when we have that meeting will be based around that, and then maybe we may kick it back here. But for the purposes of what we're doing today, staff has come up with a robust plan and a good agenda item. I think we go back to the county, we have another conversation about this, and then after that conversation at the county, we come back here, or maybe talk about that joint meeting with city county. I think we address it there, but I think we've dug into this pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and make the motion for staff recommendation on this. Sure.
All right, we got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Williams-Cox, would you
I'll second
second it? There's a motion and a second, and I guess the two things that concern me is the clear cutting, the potential clear cutting of the 150 acres. That's a lot of land, a lot of trees. So
down there.
we would be eliminating.
We got it.
And then the $50 million price tag. And so, we'd have to figure out where that kind of money is going to come from. So anyway, but I'm glad to hear that those issues will be addressed at the county commission. As Autumn mentioned, this is not a blueprint project, but certainly we want all of our governmental bodies working together to address this issue.
Mr. Chair, on point real quick.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Epstein did mention that land that the city owned. Would somebody like to address that? Or if not, it's fine. I thought that piece was, I guess. But can somebody address that? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Pendergreen?
I'll take
Autumn?
that. Thank you.
Ms. Calder?
Yeah, we've coordinated with the city's Underground Utilities and Public Infrastructure Department. They run the T.P. Smith Water Reclamation Facility. A large portion of that property is used for that facility, as well as spray fields. And then there's a portion of it that's currently used with the Munson Slough itself, so the water that comes down into Lake Munson. And it's also used as a staging area for stormwater system sediments that are destined for reuse.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's sufficient. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner
Matlow.
Matlow, I'm sorry. I was having a senior moment, Commissioner. I'm sorry.
No problem.
That happens to me from time to time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the county taking the lead on this and
Yeah.
seeing where we can get. I do think we heard a lot of good data about improvements that are along the way, but I think we always got to center it on people look at the lake, they see the condition of the lake, and that's what's going to drive their concerns. It's going to be a long, long time before anybody's willing to go jump in that lake. I know I certainly wouldn't in the condition it's in right now. So I think just when we think about, or as the county progresses with their plan, it would be good for us to know what's the goal? What's the end goal of where we're trying to get? Is it reduce nutrients? Like how clean are we trying to get in where you're going? And if it comes back to that board, I'd be happy to have the conversation, but I appreciate the efforts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Matlow. Were we ever able to get
We were, I don't.
Commissioner Porter? Commissioner Porter?
Nothing from me.
Okay, I just want to, did you have any comments, or I just want to make sure you were online for the vote?
I'm here. Thank you. No comments.
Okay, all right. All right,
Chairman, I want to.
Commissioner
Thank you so much. In an abundance of transparency, if staff can help me to understand, isn't this lake beyond recovery? And there is no recoverable threshold from which any of us in our lifetimes will be able to go and fish and swim and paddle around and stuff. So the reformation of this particular lake, this body, mostly a conversation, but we will not be able to, like getting Down syndrome. It's just, you can try to stabilize, you never come back to 100%, something like that. And this lake is too far gone. I'm not saying that, but it won't be resurrected. So Commissioner Matlow's question, what is our goal? And staff, have we not received the science that says that it's not recoverable to a recreational standard that our public can go and engage? Is that accurate?
For the details of the Leon County Action Plan, I see that Anna Padilla is here. I think in terms of recreation at the lake, and correct me on this, but it is open for recreation. It is open, is it not, for fishing? It is open for a number of activities currently. So the goals of the action plan, I think, largely also center around the reduction of the algal blooms and some of the other nutrient loading that has occurred. That's what the drawdown is attempted to address in a natural manner. But I think that's the best way I can answer your question, sir.
I'm not inspired. The last time I was at the lake, it had, the county had toxic signs and keep out of the water and keep animals out of the water. Have those things been removed? I mean, we're saying that those are, have at it signs there?
The signs have been removed, sir.
Okay. I want to say that that what is not showing up in this particular report, but is there a threshold at which we can recover this water body to say it meets Florida's whatever those standards are? The lake had really been junked up, and if that answer is not here, I'm just looking for it sometime.
I understand. I do think further details will be available in the 6-month update that's coming to you at your next meeting in terms of the goals of the Lake Munson Action Plan and all that's been done thus far, the benefits of the drawdown, and what's in the foreseeable future.
Very good. I would just say that I would be remiss not to amplify that the county's government has steadfastly invested in sewer matters and infrastructure. A part of that is to reduce polluting this lake. It's been a focal point. And our focus was not driven by this push to save Walkulla Springs as much as it was to mitigate the negative impacts upon Lake Munson itself. And then for just the first-classness and the adequacy of contemporary sewer provided to citizens who live in Leon County. That's been the driver. And while this report possibly has no business here at the Blueprint, as we have no jurisdiction or anything like that. It's been information, but Leon County has been working continuously. And for the piles of money that we've put in, I think I saw $230 million up on the screen. That's a hell of a lot of money to address that problem. I am saying that in our effort to push forward for sewering the area that could help the Little Lake, that the city's assistance, it becoming a major priority sooner than later, would also complement what the county is doing. And if we had that complementary force, which I believe could be forthcoming, my fingers are crossed, that while it wouldn't come from the blueprint, yet the net effect would also work just as well in protecting the viability of this lake being someplace you might walk in. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. Before we take the vote, let me go back to in item 5 because I did not give Commissioner Porter an opportunity to vote on that item. Her vote is. So, Commissioner Porter?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I did not give you an opportunity to vote on item 5, the Tharp Street corridor improvements. How did you want to vote or be recorded as voting?
In the affirmative.
Okay, all right. So the motion still carries 5-0. Is that appropriate, Madam Attorney?
Wouldn't be 5-0. Yes,
It passes unanimously. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the commission. All right. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. No, any more questions, comments? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Sign. Commissioner Porter is voting yes. The motion carries unanimously. Okay. Ben, is there anything else that needs to come before us on the business side?
You have 2 items, director discussion items and adjournment, sir.
Okay.
Nothing more on general business.
One of the things that Commissioner Proctor wanted to mention to you in light of your conversation about the septic to sewer, Commissioner Williams-Cox and I attended the Florida Black Caucus of Local Elected Officials conference recently down in Orlando, and there was a very informative presentation made by a young man. I've got his business card. I can't remember his name, but I shared with the city manager the email that he sent me in response to my questions about that particular program. Apparently, it is a program that Congress has adopted by law, but they haven't funded it. And so, you know, I guess that's one of the things we're going to have to do is try to get our congressional delegation, hopefully, to lead the charge on getting that program, getting an appropriation. And what it does is it would pay for both the city costs and the residents' connection. And so it would be definitely what we're needing here in Tallahassee and Leon County. But there's no funding.
I hope that Vince Long is listening to you in those comments, and we definitely need to do that. Thank you for sharing.
So, you know, if you have an opportunity to speak with Congressman Dunn or one of our states, U.S. senators, let them know that we're very interested in that program being funded. And we can get you the information on it if you'd like.
Thank you.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Chair, not only Mr. Putnam, I hope he's listening to it. I hope he's taking notes. So federal lobbyists about it.
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely.
Let me go with Commissioner Caban, and then I'll come to you, Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say thank you to staff. Both items on today's agenda were District 2 items, along with one in consent with Capital Circle Southwest. So I really want to say thank you for focusing and putting a lot of attention on District 2 in the southwest part of Leon County. I appreciate it, and I know our constituents appreciate it as well. So thank you.
Of course. You've got a very good representative advocating on their behalf. So thank you for the work you do. Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think most of you probably know I've spent quite a bit of time seeking ways to improve North Monroe, which has suffered a decline over the last several years. It's the #1 gateway into Tallahassee, and so more visitors form an impression of our entire community at the I-10 North Monroe interchange than anywhere else. The condition of that area affects not just the 500 businesses that are on the corridor, but also everyone in the entire county. We have, as you know, we've got $12 million allocated for the North Monroe Gateway project for Blueprint, but the funding for it isn't expected until fiscal year 2030-31. I think there are real advantages to getting this funding earlier. We're at a pivotal point in North Monroe right now in the corridor, and public investment now can have a huge impact on private investment in the next few years. So I'd like to make a motion for asking staff to bring back an agenda item for our May 11th budget workshop, where we can review pro forma scenarios on how we might accelerate funding for the project. I'd like to see options on how we can maybe issue a bond to make this funding available in the next 1 to 2 years, options that might have very minimal impact on any other projects or no impact on other projects, which I think is very important. The timing of this with the budget workshop in May is perfect. So with that, I'd like to make a motion for that agenda item. Come back, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a
Second.
What was the motion?
You want to restate?
Yes, the motion was to bring back an agenda item on reviewing options for accelerating funding for the North Monroe Gateway project and having that funding be available to us in the next 1 or 2 years. Looking at a couple different pro forma options, looking for ways where we can do that so that it doesn't impact any other Blueprint projects.
Okay. And was that a second, Commissioner Porter?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Maddox?
I'll yield to Commissioner O'Keefe.
No, I wasn't up for this issue. Go ahead.
If I remember correctly, one of the things that we talked about over and over again, is this the infrastructure dollars? Is this the
Yeah.
economic
Yeah.
development?
This is
Infrastructure.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure. I remember when we were talking about bonding for other projects, there was a large conversation around the fact of what bonding would do to the capacity that we have, the dollars that we have to spend. And so I just want to make sure that we understand that bonding will come with a cost. I don't mind moving in this direction, Commissioner Minor. But as we move in this direction, I think we need to also think about those projects that are on the south side of town around some of the development that's being put together there to make sure that we're thinking about how we can expedite those projects as well. So I can support this motion for us to look at this item coming back in bonding. But as we go down this road, also, I would not be surprised if once we got there, we didn't also hear about other projects in town that we'd like to be a part of something like this, that are just as worthy, if not, I wouldn't say more, but just as worthy as this to push our community forward as we continue to develop as a community. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And Commissioner, are you on this item?
Mr. Chair.
On this, Commissioner Maddox inspired me, actually, on, he made a good point I want to add
All
to
right,
it.
you're
Thank you.
recognized.
Carrying on with that, I agree this is a major issue in an area that could use it. But given that we have so many projects that have been on the list for so long, I really just have a point of information. Our May meeting will have budget updates on, am I correct in my understanding that our May meeting will have budget updates and status on all Blueprint projects? Okay, I'm seeing yes.
Yes.
Then would we need motions or issues if we chose to adjust things based on the information on all projects that we got at the May meeting?
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're preparing a budget workshop that is, the starting point of that workshop is aligned with all of the direction, the policy direction and the budgetary direction that you've received today. So going all the way back to the prioritization workshop from years ago and all the subsequent budgets since, including, for example, elevating up the fairgrounds and the Northeast Park into. Also, as was actually acted on tonight, didn't require a bond, but the animal services shelter. Initially, that was you may recall, that was the last ranked project, and there was an opportunity to elevate that up. So going into your budget workshop, the goal is to update the revenue analysis, update the bond capacity analysis, update the project cost estimates, and to do that and to bring back a balanced plan in accordance with all of the policy direction you've already as a body given to staff. This motion, if it passes, would make a small tweak to that. It would have us also work on an agenda item that would look at the implications of elevating or advancing up one specific project, as I understand it. Motion on the floor.
Yeah.
If that's helpful, that's the clarity.
Thank you.
Commissioner Proctor?
Mr. Chairman, I think to the question being asked, maybe 6 of the commissioners at this table, as Ben laid out, that this is a sequential process built over time, that this list has come and we've tweaked and elevated. And the real question is, to what extent are current and brand-new members bound to the list that they inherit? And we necessarily have no policy that prohibits new eyes, new commissioners who were not a part of that initial origin of evolution on this project list, but with urgency to address matters which their predecessors did not see as that highest priority. I think that that's a ongoing dynamic. And if I were a new commissioner, I certainly would have that concern. So my question in general is, given the process, to what extent are we just absolutely bound, and maybe General Counsel can tell us, that we're bound by this project list except for what we've told to the public, and we baited the public, and the public voted the referendum of projects which we publicized. But do we really have to stay there? And can brand new commissioners come and swap up? Please help us to settle that dynamic. That's what's going on here.
Madam Attorney?
Yes, Commissioner Proctor, you raise a very good question. I think the real issue here is how much can the agency do at one time. So you do have a list of projects that you accelerated. We will, can certainly look at that if it's the will of the board to do so. But we have until 2039 to complete these projects. And there's a reason why it's spread out over 20 years. Money is, sales tax dollars are due to be collected. When we bond, that the bond rating agencies look at our ability to collect that money over a certain period of time. And the more we bond, the more we have to show that we are able to collect that money over a certain period of time, given the economic, things that are occurring in that environment. So all of that has to be considered. Certainly we can't do everything at one time. Legally, certainly we can consider, different projects to come to change the priority. But the key really is, from a practical standpoint, what can we do given the resources we have, the projects that we have already moved on?
Thank you very much.
And I would think, too, that we have to be cautious in how we do that, because once we open the floodgates, there are going to be others coming who are going to say, I want my project moved up, and then everybody wants their project done within the next 10 years, and then where are we? So just keep that in mind as we move forward. This is not the first time now that we've contemplated, moving projects up and bonding those projects, and as the attorney said, that comes with a price tag. So just to keep those issues in mind as we move forward. Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a good discussion. We should have this discussion, certainly. I just think let's give us the option of discussing this. A few minutes ago, we had a discussion about Tharp Street and maybe accelerating the funding for that, which I completely agree with. I'm enthusiastic about the opportunity of us accelerating some of those dollars. The people in Northwest Tallahassee, if you talk to them, anywhere throughout the county, they'll tell you that North Monroe is in decline. And now we actually are at a pivotal point now where we might be able to do something about it and reverse that trend. So I'm not asking you to approve accelerating funding for North Monroe now. I'm asking you to allow the agenda item to come back so we can have that discussion. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I got you that time.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I don't mind the item coming back for discussion, but I think it goes back to what we've been talking about for years. Since I've been on this board, I think this board, though I disagreed with it, picked its priorities. We saw the Northeast Gateway go from a $40 million project when it was just the Shamrock extension. The second part got added, it became $80 million plus. With bonding, that became the priority. We saw a similar thing with the airport gateway. You know, at some point, your priorities are where you put your money. And as we were making those decisions, we recognized we're going down a path where we might not be able to fund all the projects we already have. You know, so we look for outside sources of funding. For Tharp Street, we're currently talking about paring it down, which I think is a great idea when we just think about the future of transportation and not continuing to expand roadways. But I would just caution us, we do have a duty to be fiscally responsible with what we have and what we can spend. And some decisions make it harder to prioritize other projects. And I do think if we start bonding more and more projects, I mean, what's on the chopping block? If we do make that decision and we decide to go forward with it, let's have the real conversation of like, okay, this is not going to be done by 2040. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I agree with you on that, Commissioner Matlow, because, you know, one of the things that made this second iteration of the sales tax possible was the fact that every project that was promised to this community was completed on time and within budget. And so, you know, I don't know what will happen in 10 years. We got about 10 more years on this second 20-year iteration. But if it turns out to be the fact that we do need to go back to the public, we need to keep faith with what we've told them and make sure that we do have the money to pay for all the projects that were promised and not have to come back to them for another tax increase to pay for the interest on the bonds that we floated this time around. So again, we can have that conversation, but those are just issues we must keep in mind as we do have that conversation. Commissioner Minor?
Yeah, thank you so much. There's one thing I neglected to point out, and I know Commissioner Williams-Cox wants to speak, but when I say no impact to other projects or very minimal impact to other projects, what I imply by that is actually reducing the amount of funding allocation. So for example, we have a $12 million for the North Monroe Gateway project. One option, this is what Mr. Pingree and I talked about during the briefing, is taking that $12 million, but then taking away the debt service cost that would arise from bonding it early. So you turn that $12 million to $10 million for the project plus $2 million for debt service. Now, I'm making those numbers up, but that's what I'm talking about. Let's come up with options to where it does not have that type of fiscal impact on other projects because you're reducing the amount of allocation to the project itself. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. And Ben and I talked about during the briefing, and I want to make sure that was made clear to everyone here, too. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Williams-Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have no problem supporting, because you're basically just saying bring some information back to help us make a decision. I don't have a problem with that. Meanwhile, there is still work that can be done in that corridor to improve it. One of the things that we did here at the City Commission recently was to approve the affordable housing, workforce housing option for the Motel 6 there, that I think will be a great improvement in that area, because we know that some other things that may have been going on at the Motel 6, and if nothing else, having a vacant building. So there are still things that we can be doing as we in improving the area while we deal with this particular project. The other thing I wanted to mention too is that as a taxpayer, I did vote for sales tax both times. And what made me do it a second time was the fact that the things that were said that would be done the first time did happen. But I think that when we go into these 20-year type agreements, we base it on what we know at the time. But we have to be agile, sometimes hostile and mobile, to be able to react to things that happened that we didn't know was going to happen. When we agreed to this, we didn't know COVID was coming. You know, we didn't know a lot of things were happening. So I think that if for some reason we are not able to deliver on everything we promised, if we are able to relay that very transparently and to our residents and our taxpayers, I think that it would be understandable why we may have had to make some changes. And having said all of that, one of the things that I can't remember whether it was voted, whether it was something we promised or not, but the convention center. was one of the things that I thought that was what we voted for, but in a meeting, we almost voted to take it off the list altogether. And I'm questioning, asking now, it is still on a list somewhere, I hope,
Yes.
because we still need to deal with that at some point in time of having a convention center. I am working with the group right now, trying to convince them to come to Tallahassee with 10,000 attendees and not go to Tampa. But we're having to, grab space and all this kind of stuff where we can and say, hey, look, this is what we got. But we got a gingerbread house, whereas they got a full, cake that they can just walk right into. So we cannot neglect to remember that in order to have economic, I can't see Keith right now, but in order to have some economic impact, we got to be able to bring large groups here.
Yes.
And so we still need to make sure that we have the meeting space and the convention center, hotels, and all those kinds of things to keep our city vibrant. So I wanted to make sure that we're still holding on to the convention center. All right, thank you.
And it's my understanding that we're the only state capital in the southeastern region without a convention, for what it's worth. Okay, any other comments?
Chairman, I was trying to hold out, but
Hold on just a second.
Commissioner O'Keefe was nudging me over here.
Commissioner Porter, did you have any final comments or remarks?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right. Commissioner Proctor, you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Cox brings up a tremendous point. And that point is how that convention center inflation eroded before we were able to bring it forward. Within 4 or 5 years, inflation made the monies we had designated, the project became untenable to complete. And I think that at some urgent moment, we're going to find when you bring a big to town and they pay cost exceeding costs and buy up all the concrete, a lot of our projects probably won't make it. And I think that we have to look, perhaps, given the margins of cost of concrete and everything else with inflation, that this project list can't be completed at the price, the numbers that we have, period. How we deal with that reduction process, I'm unsure. I did want to indicate that I travel over on Capitol Circle, request one of my favorite constituents, my mama, and she wanted to see something about a bridge that she had heard about in the news. And I felt very, very inspired and uplifted to see dirt being turned in front of the airport, coming back to the Elbow, Orange, and area. It felt good. And I want to give kudos to staff for executing. I'm a commissioner who love to see dirt and dust flying, especially over the south side. I don't even care if the plane can't take off. Just keep doing what we're doing. It made me feel good. Even my mother felt very, very good, and I was gauging her response to what we're doing. And it made me really feel good. But one of the things as a policy matter, and I'm not sure that what extent we have juice, but to Keith and Brother Keith and Brother Jones, I would say, in terms of diversity on these work sites, our board desires for some kind of diversity in those dollars. I didn't see that much. Yesterday was nobody hardly working at all. But when I've gone out there at select times, I'd love to know if those contractors are living up to our hopes, are disappointing our expectations. So diversity, workforce, that money is being spent. I love that dirt. I really love it when all parts of the community get to participate in earning from it as well. So I would be curious about an update with what is occurring from the MBE perspective. And finally, Mr. Chairman, Secretary Buttigieg talks about, can't think of the name, Vince, if you can remember the name, the iced tea money. Where is this money that's supposed to be coming in transportation? implementation. And to the extent that Commissioner Richardson is talking about, where is the money? And it's been talked. And would it be inappropriate that our staff is, use the word unctioned to consecrated and ordained to go after that money? We need some of that money. We're going to need outside money just to make the project list that we have. And there is nothing that prohibits. I would love to see some of these job descriptions expanded, extended to go after. We have lobbyists as a city, we have lobbyists as a county, but we ain't got lobbyists that I'm aware of for the blueprint. And the blueprint needs money, in particular the specialized categories the chairman has lifted up today. And when that money is ripened and comes down, we need lobbyists on staff or to take the staff that we have and expand their assignments. They're very capable of doing so. Those comments I'd like to register. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Anything else? Okay, there's a motion to adjourn.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, you haven't voted on the motion yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. I apologize for that, Commissioner Minor. There is a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Commissioner
No.
Reporter is voting in the affirmative.
Hold on, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I didn't know you weren't doing good.
all opposed, same sign.
No.
There, okay.
One no.
There is one objection. Okay.
So noted.
All right. Anything else? Commissioner O'Keefe.
Appreciate it. I just want to take a moment to give credit where credit is due. I've been, in the past, I have been critical of Blueprint, and I want to commend them and Mr. Epstein and our other community activists who bring important issues. And I want to thank Blueprint and Blueprint staff for, even though we didn't pick this as the fix for the issues regarding Lake Munson, I do appreciate all the time that you put in responding to community issue the community is particularly concerned with. And I also am very much looking forward to and appreciate everyone's concern for continuing to address quality of our water and our environment with other projects going forward. And then for the sake of meeting time, that's just the most important thing. I'll save the rest for what I'm sure will be a very short budget update workshop in May. Thank you.
Okay. Nothing else? We will stand adjourned.